Um, and I think the first thing I'd like to do, as we started yesterday, is just kind of let the dust settle a little bit. And what I'd like to suggest is we all just close our eyes and take a few minutes just to be in our bodies, be in our lives, and kind of let that sense of appreciation that naturally arises as you allow yourself to synchronize your body and mind and your heart. You literally might notice kind of the quality of the dust settling, or concerns of your world letting up a little bit. And you come to this simplicity of presence, the simplicity of just beingness. Hopefully you can hear the serenading that starts up with our birds that are also calling you in to just be present and to love your life. Okay, then while we have this moment of being in our bodies and giving ourselves this extraordinary gift of presence, I always start these talks in the same way, and it's actually a traditional way of starting the sharing of the Dharma, the sharing of heartfelt connection, which is to ask yourself or allow yourself to become familiar with what I call your North Star. By that I mean, what is the motivation that brings you to this meeting today? What motivated you to give time to this? And in some sense, let that question you say of, what's my motivation, drop like a pumice stone, you could say, in a crystalline wisdom pot. In other words, let it deepen, like what is motivating you in your life? And what motivates you to want to learn this practice? Let those questions kind of resonate in your heart, in your mind. Give yourself the gift of thinking of the profundity of motivation altogether. It's said that the depth of how you understand or where Medicine Buddha touches you is completely dependent on your motivation. The more profound your motivation, the more profound the connection and the resonance with Medicine Buddha happens. And I've said sometimes, literally, it can almost be embarrassing to declare to yourself what motivates you in life. The reason it can be embarrassing is because I think most of us have such extraordinarily gallant hearts. We not only wish for our own health, which of course makes sense, but if I could guess, again, with this group of folks, I would bet that most of us really truly have an intention that we hope we could help the world in some ways, that we could better our world, which is one of the ways of, you could say, connecting, or one of the ways that you're accepted into more profound ways of thinking about the world, is by understanding that it's a deep, heartfelt desire of all of us, at least in this meeting, to figure out how to help people. in some ways we all have some sort of innate heroine, innate hero in us. Yesterday I used the example that we all wish we have the bravery that when called on we would go and save that person from the oncoming subway car. Or actually I have a couple of people I know personal stories of where they were in that situation. They responded with great gallantry, with great courage. And I think it's good to actually recognize that this is somewhat a human quality. It's actually said that you're built from this, that you're built from two things. You're built from this natural inherent compassion, this desire to help, and you're built from wisdom. Those two things are said what beingness is made of. So I want you to again just allow that gift or allow that reality to kind of enter your body mind, that when you slow down enough to just be, what's there is a wisdom person, is your wisdom, and this profound sense of wanting to help, compassion. Okay, thank you. So that's touching into the motivation altogether of how to connect. And that's an interesting thing because on the one hand, we kind of have this almost bizarre sense of wanting to be in control and kind of a heightened sense of self-absorption and self-shenanigans, you could say, of all just trying to kind of jockey ourselves into some illusion of control of our world. And then if we have a quiet moment, there it's this, that actually we also wish to help people. We wish to help the world. And there's a classic saying that goes back to the 7th century by a great saint, Shantideva, and the saying goes, if you want to be happy, think of others. And if you want to have not a good time, just keep thinking of yourself. So again, I'm just emphasizing that this is how this would be the motivation of connecting and how to benefit our world just all together. One of the reasons I was inspired by this was I felt inspired to do this is I felt really kind of helpless, like I was on the sideline. Like, it reminded me a little bit of the Vietnam War where we had cocktails while watching a war. It was the first time a war was televised, and I feel like I'm watching this pandemic and I feel frustrated somewhat because of my age and somewhat susceptibility, that I wanted to try to contribute something. And it came to me that sharing medicine Buddha was one of the things I can do. So that's, of course, why we're here. I think we're sitting on a profound opportunity at this point, where we actually have a possibility through the power of creativity, imagination, and heartfelt motivation to see that we come out of this with a different world. Every time we've had crises that actually encompass the world, World War I, World War II, pandemic, Spanish flu, it changed the way the world looked at itself. I guess classically this is called a paradigm shift. So we collectively can create a new vision because of this kind of vulnerability or susceptibility right now in terms of uncertainty and openness and groundlessness that exists. And that openness or that groundlessness I kind of want to frame as three different components. The first one is that there's just tremendous uncertainty. If I say, well, what are you going to do in a month? Or what will you be doing in a month? We go, I don't know. We have really no idea how this thing's going to land. And sometimes in Buddhism that's called don't know mind. And it's considered the mind of poets and creative people and seers and sages. This actually ability to go to a blank piece of paper and go, what's going to happen? a good friend, not trying to just name drop, Pema Chodron wrote a book, Comfortable with Uncertainty. This kind of sense of being comfortable with we really never know what's going to happen in life, but we have a lot of pretension around it, a lot of desire to control it, but all of a sudden everybody's in this groundless state of uncertainty, of don't know mind. That's a very, very fertile place. Because when you know things for certain, there, quite frankly, isn't much profundity there. We're kind of repeating this discursive thought constantly to ourselves, and the surfacing of profound and large visions and heartfelt motivations are lost. I mean, frequently you go through a whole day and all you can see is self-concern and worry the whole day. On the other hand, now we have the possibility, because of this uncertainty, for our profundity to show up. These profound questions. What are we going to do? What's our life about? So that's kind of item number one, is the profound uncertainty. The second one is something we'll be chanting later in the talk, where I'll say, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. We're confronted with huge numbers of death, huge numbers of illness. 57 days ago, there was one death in the United States. 57 days now, we will eclipse all the people that died in the Vietnam War, over 54,000 people in 2 months. That's 54,000 families suffering intense pain in front of our eyes. So we're getting this reality, this invitation to understand that life is impermanent, precious, sacred, and that it's not to be wasted. So this is another, you could say, tremendous potential to again awaken profound thoughts, to hear profound ways of looking at the world. The last piece that, as I see, that provides an opportunity for this paradigm shift, this creation of a new vision, is that we are so interconnected now. Here I am on a Zoom call. Yesterday we went from Nova Scotia to Hawaii. Today we're going from the East Coast to the West Coast. TV brings this into our home. 3 weeks ago we saw Italy dying in the streets, Italian dying in the streets. 2 weeks ago was Spain. Now we're in the highlights. Now we're going to watch this go across our world and watch the profundity of suffering that's going to happen in in India, Afghanistan, Africa. So this sense that we're in this together, it's like in '69 we got that beautiful picture of the Earth floating in space, and somehow we're still organized around tribes. The virus does not care about boundaries. And quite frankly, when you think of your motivation of concern, it does not stop at boundaries. It does not think of nations. So we have this sense of actually being a global community. And that's a profound way of looking at the world, and can possibly, again, contribute to this paradigm shift or this new vision that could arise. Before I start the practice, I want to just reiterate, I'm not generally prone to what I call conspiracy theories, and I'm not generally kind of prone to believing a lot of predictions, but there were some I just wanted to share with you. For some reason, these have been in my mind. And if you could say our two great spiritual leaders in our world, one would, to me, be the Dalai Lama, and I'm not trying to be controversial at all, but another one would be the Pope. And both these gentlemen are saying that our earth, which in Tibetan Buddhism is seen as a live creature, a being, is unhappy, and is showing this unhappiness through plague, famine, war, floods, fire. So when both your profound spiritual leaders, they're not trying to pull a God guilt trip are saying the earth isn't happy. I think there's something to be listened to there. And the other thing is, I can't help, I hope you've seen some of these pictures of the jellyfish in the canals of Venice and the lions laying on the streets in Africa and the penguins marching down the streets of, I think that was Iceland. And it's like humans aren't happy, but the other inhabitants of the globe are saying, let's rock, let's play. These guys are taking a break. So I think there has to be something that we look at there and say, how are we going to do this differently, whether that's racial equality, before we go back to all the shootings, before we go back to life as it was. We hear, oh, we can't wait to get back to the way it was. Our economy was booming, and I'm going, really? After World War II, for example, Europe has experienced almost its first peace in the history of Europe after World War II. What a shift. And the League of Nations and the United Nations, all because people said, wow, we've got to do this differently. So we're at one of those times where we can do things differently. And there's certain predictions that have come across, prophecies that have come across my desk, and imagine you too, the Hopi Blue Star prophecy. And it says, after the blue star makes its appearance for some time, there will be no more ceremonies around the world. Particles in the air and ether will cause a disease that no medicine can cure. And it says the blue star is the last sign before the fifth world emerges. Those who are at peace in their hearts already are in the great shelter of life. That's from a Hopi email that's being circulated. I don't know if you remember the Kogi Indians from Colombia. It was a BBC coverage where they came out of their hiding, you could say, and they call themselves the older brother, and they call us, particularly white people, the younger brother. And they considered it their sacred duty to maintain the balance of the earth, and part of that was to teach us about the earth, about spirit, about living in harmony. And they said that the younger brother had to understand that they were in danger of hurting the entire globe. And I'm going to read a small quote. I'm not trying to browbeat you with this. I'm trying to say this: we are on a precipice of perhaps a profound paradigm shift, and the people who contain the clearest vision are the ones who are going to, you could say, succeed. It's like he with the biggest vision wins. And this is from the 8th century yogi who is kind of the Jesus figure in Tibetan Buddhism altogether. His name is Padmasambhava. So this is 12th century ago. I see there will come a time in the distant future when human beings will possess fickle intellects and ever-changing opinions. At that time, for all sentient beings, the three great evils of disease, poverty, and warfare with terrifying weapons will greatly increase. I didn't read these yesterday because I didn't want to emphasize them, I guess, but today I felt like it was time for us to actually realize that we could be on one of those precipices, that we can, with our minds, we can create this. Everything, and that's what a visualization practice is, what I'm going to teach you. It puts the power of creation, the power of the mind's ability to create. That's what you're going to be practicing. So that's my introduction to the practice, and now I want to do the practice itself, and Jay's going to put that up on the screen. I hope today you can all see this. There it is. Okay. So to learn medicine Buddha practice is actually somewhat a daring practice. It's daring because you're using this power of the mind to create your worlds, the imagination, the power of all creation, you could say, altogether. But to do that, there's kind of a certain kind of basis or ground of mind training and of intent and motivation that you have to establish that both give you the ability to paint with your mind, paint with your heart, but also to have the security and the protection of your ancestors. So at first, it's now my pleasure, I guess you could say, to introduce you to Menla, Medicine Buddha. And Menla is an ancient, actually Medicine Buddha is an enlightened being who dedicated himself, and I want to go into that a little bit, by himself, he was a human being who was a man, but I really don't think it's absolutely necessary that you just see this as a man or a woman. It's more like not exactly androgynous, but an archetype of a person that represents all healing intention throughout all times. Just imagine the altruistic wisdom and compassion that have gone into people taking care of each other, the shamans, the doctors, the nurses, the inventors, the researchers. If you just let it hit you how much activity, we call it bodhisattva activity, has come from healers, from people who's put their lives in jeopardy with the intention of relieving ours and others' pain. That's the kind of nobility and beneficence that you're taking on when you become Medicine Buddha. So this is the first song I've written, the first time I've taken, you could say, and written it's like a version of a great cover song. And the version that I've written came from 4 different sources. So I read through this, and at that point, this is like saying formally, Shelley or Barbara, this is Medicine Buddha. My sister Barb, this is Medicine Buddha, I'd like you to meet. And there's a sense of being introduced formally, so that you now have Medicine Buddha's email. You have Medicine Buddha's phone number. And you have Medicine Buddha's song. You have Medicine Buddha's mantra. So I'll read this, and then I'll go over how to practice it, and then we'll open it up for discussion. So if you would just kind of close your eyes and be with the words, that would be fantastic. There are many versions of this practice. The one below I wrote utilizing teachings and transmissions from Dingo Khyentse Rinpoche, Trungpa Rinpoche, Jamgon Kongtrul Rinpoche, and Lama Rinchen. First, rest in heartfelt presence and appreciation. Then declare to yourself as you speak softly, I take refuge in the sacred space of my inherent wisdom and compassion. I take refuge in the sacred space of my inherent wisdom and compassion.